Good afternoon from Vietnam, Joseph. Thanks a lot for spending your morning to join our show and share your stories and your insights on the topic of wisdom to our global audience and on behalf of the listeners around the world. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Nice to be here. Lovely sunny morning here in England.
Wow, I would love to be there to enjoy the sunny day. It's rainy here in Vietnam, so.
Well, it's nice to have seasons. I like England because it has seasons, you know. There's the cold and the warm and the in-betweens, which are best of all.
Yeah, well, and for our audience, it's very honor for them to know who you are, the work you are doing. Would you please do that introduction first?
You're asking an Englishman to introduce themselves and make themselves, you know, a grand person. I don't know what qualifies me as being on your show. I feel honoured myself. I'm not sure what qualifies me apart from being very, very old. I mean,
you help people to be better leaders, better manager through the work you've been doing. That's qualifies right there. So tell us who you are and the work you do, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking perhaps my hesitation is I can tell you what I do, but more important is the impact that I would have on other people. So, you know, if you want to find a good leader, don't ask them. Go and ask the people that they lead. It just reminds me of a story of two very famous speakers in ancient Greece. I don't remember their names, but one of them, you know, world famous speaker, and when people were asked about his speech, they say, he's a fantastic speaker, it's really great. And when they asked people who'd listened to the other speaker, they said, let's act. Now, that speaker was the better speaker in the sense that they energized people to act, to do things, to change themselves. Whereas the first speaker is a good speaker, right? Fine, no problem. You've got to have the both together, but at the same time, you've got to be able to connect with everybody and to help them, you know, move forward in the way that they want to. So it's a hard question for me to answer. I basically try to keep. How can I say? I do things that are interesting for me. That engage me with the world, that engage me with people. Some of them earn money, some of them don't. And throughout my life, I've been okay. In enough of them have earned me money. But that's not the main reason I do things.
So what's the reason for you to do things you have been doing?
It has to be a connection. It has to be something that I feel is a fit between me and the world and other people. If I'm doing something that isn't a fit, then my heart isn't in it, and I'm not going to be able to connect with other people. So that's the best. It's an interesting question because I've never really thought about that. But I think it's that. I think it's a kind of interlocking because the world is an incredibly rich place, and you can. I mean, it's just amazing. There is no shortage of wonderful, beautiful things to do, and yet we've got to choose. And somehow we have to choose, and I think it's important that we do choose. Otherwise, we can end up, well, either wasting our time or just entertaining ourselves, which is okay. But at the same time, it isn't deeply satisfying, at least for me.
So, Joseph, You mentioned about the world as a wonderful place with endless opportunity of what we could do, right? That's wisdom right there. Because a lot of people we see the glass half empty, right? And this conversation is designed to understand more about wisdom, to see what is it where is it coming from, and where how can we grow in it, and then learn and dance with it for our lives, right? Integrate to our lives. So let's start with a basic question first, shall we?
Yeah, okay, just one comment about the glass half empty.
Yes.
Glass half empty, glass half full, that's a judgment. It's a glass and it's water and it's beautiful. It's just there, whatever it is, you know. Once you
Yeah.
start judging it, that, oh, it's, you know, there's some missing, or, oh, that's not quite right, or there's a bit of dirt in there, then you're into another game.
Oh, wow. Thank you for correcting me for that one. Okay.
Not a correction, it's just these metaphors, they're very good. And I love metaphors, and because they tell you something that you can't explain. You know, you can say that glass empty, glass half full, and it's an immediate picture and it's immediate meaning, and then you can dig into it, which you can't do necessarily when you're talking in an abstract way about things.
So if there's another metaphor for us to see, you know, how people, you know, in that, I cannot say the glass half empty anymore. So what can we use? What can we use as a metaphor?
One will come up, you know, a good one will come up. Metaphors are living, they come in response to what we're talking about. So we'll find one.
We find one. All right, alrighty. So along the way, let's start with the basic first, Joseph. Okay. So each of us we have our own definition of what wisdom is. In our understanding of this word, make sense of this word. So for you, what is this in your own definition?
um, it's a difficult question, and again, I remember a saying when I can't remember who said it, but it's like, when you define something, you cease to understand it. So when somebody asks me for a definition, I guess I could give you a definition. I don't know what it is. I'd have to think about it. But it's much more interesting to think about, how would you define it? What criteria would you use? What are you actually trying to do? What are you looking at? What distinctions are you making? All of which would go into a definition, and the definition in itself would be a bit bloodless, I think, because all of that thought and yeah, all of the thought and engaging with the idea is lost in the definition. Yeah. So you know, okay, so I'm dodging the question. But maybe a definition of wisdom is not to take things at first glance of judgment, of engaging in things rather than saying, oh well, that's that, and this is what we do, because we know well, and I've looked into neuroscience in the last years. It's been very interesting. We know well that our brain loves to jump to quick, easy responses, quick, easy thoughts. It's just a habit. It's just what we do. And it's not a bad thing, because these quick, easy answers will very often be okay. But if you're going to engage in something important, then you have to make an effort not to, you have to inhibit those quick, easy answers. Straight away. It's like, you know, I'm a coach, and I train coaches. And when I am a coach and I'm asking questions, which is basically all that coaches do, when people answer very quickly, I'm always a little bit suspicious, because if they answer quickly, then they have a kind of an answer prepared. And if they have an answer prepared, it's part of their thinking already. And if it's part of their thinking already, then it's part of the problem that they're asking me to help them solve. So I always think of this as kind of top of the brain thinking. So I'm going to ask them, okay, leave that aside for the moment. What's your best thoughts on this? What's your next thoughts on this? Why did you say that? To try to circumvent the habits that we all have of thinking. And habits are, by definition, something that we have done in the past and continue to do, and may not any longer be relevant to the situation here and now, which is again why I'm coming back to, in something important, don't just go with something easy or make a definition, but actually try to engage in what it means right now. And if you'd asked me, you know, what is wisdom 10 years ago, I'd have probably given you one answer, and if you asked me in 10 years' time, I'd probably give you another answer, because it's evolving all the time. So I'm you're going to find it hard to pin me down.
So you met a lot of amazing people, right? So if somebody that you met that had that wisdom inside of them, that Joseph said, oh, this man is interesting, this man is wise and stuff like that, what would that person do, say, or be that makes you come to that conclusion?
I think there's two answers to that question. The first answer would be, at least for me, it's almost impossible to pin down, but there's a kind of presence that people have. There's a kind of shining through that people have that you can pick up, and that allies with it comes to voice tone, it comes to body language, it comes to expression. It's all of those the communication channels, but the 5 communication channels add up to more than the sum of the parts. They're all kind of very congruent, they're all working together. And this links with the second answer, which is we're all wise, we all have an innate wisdom. So if I recognize somebody's innate wisdom, that must be because it's connecting with my own. Otherwise, how could I recognize anything? You know, I can't say anybody's wise unless I have some idea of what wisdom is, in which case it has to be inside me. So anything that I'm recognizing on the outside, or any good qualities, values that people recognize in other people, must be by definition inside themselves. It's just sometimes easier to see them in other people. And then the other answer again to that question would be, if I want someone to be wise, as it were, then part of my job is to help them to do so. In other words, to engage with them in a way that allows them to give me the wisdom that they have, whatever that might be. So wisdom, I don't think wisdom is a quality that's located in one particular person that you then kind of try and tap. I think it's a kind of field that you need to engage with in order to get an answer. So it's a co-creation, it's not something that somebody gives you.
So it's a co-creation that we have to work with other people to see it for ourselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you can interview one person and they maybe don't say very much, and then another person can interview them, and somehow it gets moving. And that's not a judgment on any of them. It's just like water. It's just like flowing. It's just you know, the water is constantly flowing, and sometimes the currents are just right.
So what can we do to bring out the best out of the people so that we can benefit from sharing the wisdom between us?
Listen. Listen and ask questions. I mean, it's like a coach, really. A coach asks questions and listens, and in that listening, the client is able to hear themselves. You know, we can never hear actually what our voice really sounds like to other people, because when we talk, it comes from the vocal cords, it bounces around the bones of the head, it's resonated in a particular way, and it sounds to us in a particular way. If you hear your voice on a recording, you think, oh my God, is that me? You know, really? So I guess what I'm getting at is, as a coach, you help the other person hear really what they're saying, because they're saying it into a field that allows them to hear it as well. Because sometimes, you know, clients will say something and then they go, wow, did I really say that? or sometimes you can go, do you know what you just said? And they're able to come to it in a different way because somebody else is like listening, really listening to them. That's kind of one part that the coach does to provide that field. The other part is to be able to then give some feedback to what the person says in a way that is helpful for them, because they haven't thought about it in that way. It's the old joke, you know, about the guy who's lost his keys at night and he's looking for them on the pavement, and along comes a good Samaritan and says, let me help you, you know, what have you lost? Oh, I've lost my keys. So they're looking around, and the good Samaritan says, I can't see them here anywhere. Where did you lose them? And the guy says, well, I lost them over there. And the Samaritan says, well, why are we looking here? And the guy says, well, there's light here, there's a street light, you know, I can see what I'm looking for. Over there it's very dark, I can't see, so I'm looking in the light. And that's a kind of joke, but it's exactly what we do. We look in the light, we look in the places that we know, and if we can't find it, the odds are it isn't there. It's somewhere else. So what the coach does is they bring out their torch, and they help the client to look in the places that were dark for the client. They don't find the keys for the client. They don't give the client a new set of keys. They allow the client to find those keys, but looking in the right place. And maybe that's, I think that's also links up with wisdom as well.
It is. Yes, please continue. Yeah.
No, I've run out. Ask me another.
Yeah. Here's the thing. You know, when you say that we're looking for what we're looking for the answer in life because of, you know, what we already know, and the answer is not there, right? So what happened to us? Why are we looking? We know that we threw the key out there, or the key somewhere out there, but why are we keeping looking where the light is? Even if it's just a metaphor, but a lot of people fall into that trap.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't like to look in the dark. We continue to look in places that don't work. It just reminds me of another story, if I can. God, it's a poem. I can't remember it exactly, but it's about a man who's walking down the street. So we're in the street. We're still in the street, so I guess I'm allowed to do this. He's walking down the street, and he falls into a deep hole. He hurts himself, and he clambers out, and he curses the hole, and he phones the local authority and says there shouldn't be a hole in the sidewalk. So then he goes home, and the next day he's walking down the same street, and he falls into the hole again, and he thinks, it's still there. I really need to look where I'm going. This is crazy. So he gets out, and he goes back again. Next day he comes down again, and he sees the hole, but somehow he can't stop himself from falling into it. He sees it too late, so he falls in. He's really annoyed with himself, gets out again, goes home, thinks about it. Next day, walks down the street, and he sees the hole. He goes, ha ha, and then he walks round it, and then he goes home. And the next day, he walks down a different street.
Wow. That's wisdom right there. Right.
I didn't write it, I just read it. I read it from someone, but it fits. And it's a kind of little joke, because I think wisdom is often like that, with a punchline. You know, you go, there's a solution, 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 they're all solutions, yeah, to this problem of falling down. But then it's, oh, yes, well, actually, I don't have to go down that street at all. Then there's no problem. Then that problem just isn't a problem anymore. It's not that you have to solve it. It just isn't there.
What would happen if it took another path and there's different holes in that path?
Oh, well, then you get to deal with different holes, but at least it's a different one. You know, I say to clients sometimes, it's fine to make mistakes. You know, everybody's going to make mistakes. Just the trick is not to make the same one more than once. Just make different mistakes. If you make different mistakes, life's fun, and you're moving.
When you said that,
sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. When you said that we are afraid of the dark, right? So the evolution take place for that long already. Why are we still afraid? Our instinct still afraid of the dark, so that we keep looking for the keys, you know, when we know it's not even there.
Well, yeah, evolution's been around millions of years, but electric lights have only been around, what, a few hundred years. Evolution is much, much deeper than electric lights. We are living in a world that we are completely unprepared for biologically, evolutionary, and it's obvious. You know, it's the world that we've created is no longer a fit. Evolution can't do its job because we are creating an environment that moves too fast for us to fit into, and therefore we are always out of place, and this is a trend that's accelerating. So, you know, if you live somewhere where there isn't light, it reminds me, there's a place I love in New Zealand called Lake Tekapo. It's a beautiful place. It's a little town on a lake, beautiful lake, mountains around. New Zealand is wonderful. Have you ever been to New Zealand?
Yes.
Yes, terrific. South Island. So Lake Tekapo is a very special place because it's quite out of the way. There are no big cities near it at all, and because there are mountains all around, the sky is extremely clear, and they have a very important observatory there on one of the mountains, Lake Tekapo Observatory. And in order to get best observations of the night sky, you don't want a lot of light pollution. You know, if you're in a big city, even if you've got the lights off in your house, it's like, you know, they're odd all around. You're not going to see much of the stars. But in Lake Tekapo, there is no light pollution, first of all because they're miles away from any city, but secondly, there are bylaws about how much light you can put on anyway in the actual town. So the actual town is really very dark. So you look up at the sky, and the sky is spectacular. It's something that we just don't normally see, because we're in the light. Back to our metaphor. You see, we're getting towards a metaphor here. it's just spectacular, and we don't see it because we're always in our own light bubble. But when you see it in places like Lake Tekapo, it's just fantastic. And engaging in an environment which is naturally dark, apart from the stars, is quite different. And we are kind of afraid of the darkness because we don't know what's there, and it could carry danger. This is like a second answer. And evolutionary, you know, our greatest instinct, if you like, our greatest and most important emotion is the emotion of fear, because fear saves your life. If you don't have the emotion of fear, you can die. You know, because you're just not afraid. It's extremely stupid not to be afraid. There's plenty of things to be afraid of. The people who didn't have a well-developed sense of fear were not those people who survived. So this is why, you know, the part of our brain called the amygdala is extremely active, extremely connected, and very important. And it means that we also are very anxious and afraid of things that perhaps we shouldn't be, or you know, we kind of are afraid first and then think second. So, you know, when you go along, if you're going along, say you're walking along in the grass and you see a kind of movement in the grass, you will jump first, feel anxious, and then you'll take another look, and then you'll see, oh, it's a piece of rope. It's not, you know, it could have been a snake. It looked like it was a snake, but it's actually a bit of rope. But you'll jump first, because that pathway from your eyes through to the amygdala bypasses. It goes real quick. It's the quick path, and it makes you react before the rest of your brain clicks in and goes, hold on a minute, what is that? So you know, we're afraid of the dark because it's unknown. It could hold danger. And as I think as human beings, we're also afraid of what we don't know. We're afraid of randomness. We need to predict what's going to happen. And I think modern life and evolution in that way, modern evolution, the bit that we're in control of, tries to reduce the uncertainty and the unpredictability of the world. Because we've all been through this, I think, you know, as babies, as kids, where you're born into this world, you have no idea what on earth it means or anything, or what it does, or you know, how to engage with it. And you're just there, you're helpless. And you need someone to look after you, need someone to tell you, you know, don't touch this, it's hot, it'll hurt you. Don't try to jump off this balcony because you won't float, you know, you'll hit the ground. You've got to learn. And we learn about the world, and we then come to predict how the world is going to work. You know, you predict, you're making a prediction. This is what our brain does. It predicts that if I put my hand on this hot plate, it's going to hurt me, so I don't do it. If I jump out the window down a couple of stories, I'm going to hurt myself because I believe in gravity, you know, gravity's going to take me. So we build up a model of the world, of how it works, that keeps us out of trouble. And this is very, very useful. It's also can be very, very limiting if we learn things that restrict us, but are not true. You know, it's one thing to say, you know, heat will burn your hand and gravity will drop you down, but it's quite another thing to say all people are untrustworthy, or I am not very clever, or something like that, because that's equally a mental model, and it's equally a prediction about the world. And because a world of randomness is impossible for us. We can't deal with it. You couldn't deal if you went out of your front door and suddenly you had no idea what did what. You didn't up or down, or what would hurt you or who wouldn't. It's we can't deal with it. It's the quickest way to make anybody go crazy, is to remove the predictability of what they know about the world and to just make it random. you'll make people incredibly anxious and then neurotic and eventually psychotic if you do that. You know, it's how prisoners of war are broken down. So we need those mental models because we can't deal with this unpredictability. So those help us to navigate the world, but they also restrict us in many ways if those mental models are things like I'm stupid, because that's a prediction about me. And if I have that mental model, I am likely to act in that way, that, you know, I will be stupid. And these mental models, these predictions that we make, they become habits. They're habits of thinking, which we act on. And we act on without thinking, because a habit is something you do without thinking. So a habit of thinking is a thinking habit that we do without looking at it carefully. And many of these are very limiting because they've been built up in situations from childhood which are not representative of the world. But because we don't know any better as children, we take them on board, and then because they're predictions, we live with them and we act as if they're true, and we never engage with the world in a way that could actually find out if it was true.
Wow. Wow. So if it's a habit, we can change it also, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. Yes. You know, on a neurological level, a habit is connections in the brain that, through use, have been strengthened, so that when the electrical impulse, as it were, reaches one neuron, the easiest way for it to go is into, you know, this neuron, because that is strengthened. That way is strengthened. So that is the most likely way. But it's always probabilistic. In other words, it's never 100%. There's always a little bit of leeway. But of course, the more you do something, as we all know, you know, I play the guitar. So how did I want to get good at the guitar? I practiced it over and over and over and over again until I could play these pieces really well without thinking. And we're all familiar with that sort of habit, but what we're not so familiar with is the habits that we have about the world that are equally, that are still habits. So, you know, glass half empty, that glass half empty, that's thinking about the world. And habits, as we say, are something that goes through the path of least resistance because they've been practiced over and over again. So these habitual mental models, I think, are what get us into trouble very often, and these are the things that coaches are always trying to help people with, because as a coach or a therapist or anyone like that, you can't change anything except your client's mental models. That's the only thing that's available to change. You can't change them physically. You can't make their environment any better. You can't make their boss any nicer to them. You can't make their work any better. You know, you have no control over that. All that a coach can do is to help the client to examine and change the mental models that they have about themselves and the world, so that they can engage in a different way.
So where's the mental model start to form? Where did they get the information and stuff to form in that mental model?
Well, we get information by what we pay attention to.
All right.
So what we pay attention to is what we notice, and then that's what then I think forms the mental model, because attention is incredibly powerful. We don't really know what it is. You know, we all experience it. We all know for ourselves exactly what it is, but it's very hard to explain and almost impossible to give a scientific explanation or a neurological explanation of it. but we all know what it is. And when we really pay attention to something, that is through particular brain mechanisms that we don't really understand. That's what really strengthens the pathways in the brain. If you want to form a habit, pay attention to what you're doing, repeat it over and over again, have some value that it's important to you, and have some goal that you want to achieve. And if you do that, you'll build a habit really, really fast, and it doesn't need that many repetitions. You know, when I was playing the guitar, I knew that half an hour of really focused paying attention to what I was doing on the guitar was worth 2 hours of just, you know, mindlessly going over the same things over and over again. And so it's really important what we pay attention to.
So the question is, because the mental model comes from the information that we are paying attention to. So if we can selectively choose the information that come into our life and paying attention to that information, that specific information, would that help us to build the mental model better? And would that lead us to become wiser in a way?
Yes, I guess so. With the, if we go back to the first step, what do we pay attention to? Our attention is very easily caught, and attention, like time, is probably the two most precious commodities that we have. You know, this might be wisdom. Those are qualities that we have, and I think they're the most precious ones. And we all have them, and we all have them equally. How do we spend them? This is, you know, how we spend those two things is going to determine everything else. And yet people pay more attention to what's on the outside than what's on the inside. So yeah, I think, going back to your question, I think there is a magic moment of choice where you can go, do I really want to do this? What am I doing here? You know, and there's just a moment of choice of insight, and it's very easy to just go, no. Again, the easiest way. It's not so easy to go, well, hold on a minute. What about this? And sometimes it's sometimes there's a little trick you can play with yourself, especially if you're into something that, you know, you really want to do, but kind of part of you knows this is not really a very good way of spending my time or attention. Sometimes I'll go, okay, well, look, hold on. Just put this aside for one moment. Just let me think about it. I promise I'll come back to you. If it's going to be okay. Don't worry. It's not like I'm wrenching myself away and I'm going to do this instead. It's like, okay, hold on. You're still there. I know. I promise I'll be back if it seems the right thing to do. And sometimes that is a bit gentler way of bringing yourself out of something that you part of you knows is not such a good place to be or not such a good thing to do. But at the root of that, and here we go, I think, into something that is really important, is a practice of mindfulness or meditation, which I think is at the root of that spark of choice that you have, because that spark of choice is basically about your ability to step back somehow from what you're doing. Because if you couldn't, then, you know, you're lost. That's it. There's no blame, there's no guilt, there's no anything. It's just, if it was all completely, you know, you had no spark like that, then there's no point in arguing. But I think there is, and that's partly our ability to stand outside our experience and to see it in a different way. And this isn't so easy to do, and it needs practice. Again, like anything. So this is where a practice of meditation comes in, where meditation is not focusing strongly on one thing, or it can be, but I don't think it's necessarily that. I think meditation is simply opening your mind and noticing the thoughts that go through, and there'll be plenty of them. And it doesn't matter what they are. The point is simply that you notice them. In English we have this expression, you know, the trains of thought. We have a train of thought. And I think if you're in a meditative state, you'll see lots of trains go past. And some of them are really great expresses, and some of them are really slow freight trains, and some of them are first class, and some of them are tourist class. And the point is to notice them all go past, not to jump on any of them. Because the moment you jump on one, you'll suddenly find yourself at the next station or a few stations down the line, and you won't know how you got there. So if you can just notice that the trains go past, this is, again, helping that ability to choose in the end, to choose what you're going to pay attention to and how you're going to spend your time, which is going to make you, I think, healthy, wealthy and wise, perhaps.
Wow. So for you, and for that two particular items of what you paying attention to and how you spend your time, tell us what is that you're paying attention to and how you spend your time in a day?
Yeah, I do meditate. I have a practice of meditation. I go to the gym. I think it's, you know, exercise is really, really, really important. Cardiovascular exercise and strength training. We have a body, and you know, again, we need the body. Well, first of all, the brain is part of the body, even though it doesn't seem like it. It is part of the body, and it needs, you know, it needs to be exercised in the same way that the rest of the body needs to be exercised, cardiovascular. So, and again, if you don't have health, then it's really difficult to do stuff that you want to do. So that's important. I pay attention to that. I pay attention to meditation. I pay attention to sleep. Sleep is really, really, really important for health, and well, yeah, for physical and mental health. And the research around sleep is just too, and you know, the research, the neuroscientific research into sleep now is much more than we knew, and it's becoming really clear just how important sleep is for our brain, for our mind, and for our body. So I think to pay attention to make sure that you optimize your sleep is one of the best things you can do for yourself in every way. So, and those three things, exercise, sleep, and some form of meditation practice, they all have cast iron neuroscientific research behind them that says these things are good for your brain, for your mind, and for your body. And there's not many things that you can say have that.
Yeah.
And they seem like really simple, and you know, you go, oh yeah, sure, okay. What about something really complicated? You know, we want something complicated. The secret of wisdom, the secret of life. It's not really. You do the important things well, and that's the best. It's like watching athletes. You know, you watch runners, or any kind of athletes, tennis players, anybody who's really, really good. Watch Roger Federer, and it just looks effortless. It just looks, well, I could do that. You know, it looks really, because there's a kind of effortlessness about it, because they've got the simple things. They're doing the really simple, basic things, but they're doing them so well that they're in another class. You
Wow.
don't need the complicated stuff. That's usually a distraction. So yeah, anyway, I do those three things. It doesn't seem much during the day. I do have other times. I'm writing a science fiction novel because I find that engages my creativity in a nice way. I'm learning Japanese because I love going to Japan. And I do some coaching work and some training work. I'm also interested in end-of-life coaching, where, you know, as we all grow older and eventually we all will die, as far as we know, unless there's some amazing scientific stuff on the horizon, we're all going to die, and that's important. And it's important that it's done well and prepared for well, and that's without thinking. You know, you don't have to be mortally ill to be thinking about that. I think the fact of death, the end of a race, gives you a perspective on the whole race. You know, otherwise, you know, if a race didn't have an end, you wouldn't know how to run or how fast to run or anything else. So it's, you know, it's a bit like a legacy. It's a bit like exit strategy. It's a bit like living so that the things that are important to you become more important to you, because, you know, they say death is an advisor, and we all think we'll live forever. Of course, we all feel that we're living forever. We're all feeling right now that we have life, and that feeling is very much in the now, and we can't imagine not having it. Therefore, you know, we know that we're going to die, but at the same time, emotionally, we don't know that we're going to die. But you know, if you thought, well, you know, if I was going to die if I had 3 months left, or a year, or 6 months, or 2 days, or whatever it is, if there was definitely an end, would I be doing this right now? You know, is this sufficiently important for me to be actually doing this right now? And very often the answer is no. So then why are you doing it?
And
you're only doing it because you think you have infinite time, and you don't.
This is why we have this conversation, Joseph, and it's getting, you know, like really deep. I have 1 or 2 questions left for this one, okay? Yeah. And because of what you just said, you know, focus on what's important in our life, right? What is essential, and a lot of us don't know what is important in our life until it's too late. So, what can we do to help people to realize the earlier the better for what's truly important in their lives, and then start to move the needle into what's important in their lives?
Well, we can only engage, I think, with their own wisdom. You know, we can't tell people what to do. We can't make them do stuff. And you know, we're all familiar with the fact that if somebody tells us what to do, even if we think it's a really good idea, or is this just me, our natural thing is to go, well, hold on, because you told me that, because it came from the outside, well, you know. It's got to come from the inside. So you have to engage with that. We're back to the beginning again. You know, wisdom is about an engagement between two people. And then they will, you know, I think they will, because it's just part of the deeper wisdom of being human. And it's more a matter of uncovering it rather than giving or something special. It's more about getting the stuff out the way. It's more like cleaning the window, you know, so you can see out rather than anything else. So, you know, it's engaging in conversation with people. What's important to you? Asking questions, really getting people deeply into what they think, and looking at their thoughts in a more critical way. And it doesn't happen overnight, it doesn't happen in an instant. It takes time. And sometimes people have to be disappointed, you know. It's, you know, it's, you know, what's the path of wisdom? Well, be really, really, really attractive, really rich, have fantastic relationships, you know, enjoy all the flesh pots that that the world has to offer, and be disappointed in them. Come out the other side, and then you go, okay, well, you know.
Beautiful. Last question. Okay.
Yeah.
So for the years now, and if you can travel time again, travel time to talk to maybe yourself at the age about 8 or 9 years old, and you have a word of wisdom from yourself in the future, talk to yourself in the past about life, about whatever. You can choose one thing to talk to that little Joseph at 8 or 9 years old. What words of wisdom are you gonna tell yourself?
Oh, I would say straight, you're perfect. You're perfect, you're wonderful, I love you, you'll be great. You are great, sorry, you are great. You are great right now, because life is just a succession of nows, which we divide into time. But really, my experience of being here now is the same experience of that I had when I was 9, of being there, you know, I said dead now, as it were. That nowness is the same. So,
Wow.
so that's what I would say.
Wow. We're gonna gather one more time in the future to figure out of so many things that you can talk to that little 9, 8 years old. You chose that words of advice. Let me think about that. Let me get back to you with the question next. Okay. Hi, friend Joseph. Yeah, thanks a lot for spending your morning to share this topic, and I learned a lot from this conversation. I enjoy you tell me about the story of the cup half empty or half full. I will take it into my thinking, and I will try to minimize the use of that, because I realize your message means a lot for this conversation, for that, and I thank you for that. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why we do this conversation about this very important topic, so that people will realize what's important. Maybe we miss along the way, that we don't know, we don't mean to say things, to do things, to act, or to think something, but it's just because of, you know, you put, I wrote in here, a habit of about the world. So it's been ingrained with us for so long. So this conversation in deep will help us to break that habit and start to build our mental model again in a different approach. So thank you very much for helping us in this conversation. Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome. It only takes sometimes just a few words at just the right time, and there you go.
Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Sorry?
Happy Thanksgiving to you. Today is Thanksgiving holiday. Yes, a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
All right,
Thanks,
my friend.
Okay.
Yeah, I talk to you later. Okay.
Okay. Ciao.
Yeah. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful weekend ahead also.